Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, President Donald Trump relaying and providing information on two different military rescue operations that took place over the weekend to rescue two F-15E fighter pilots, plus the deadline tonight for Iran to make a deal with the United States. If not, the president says he is going to obliterate their infrastructure. All the details coming up. And a good Tuesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by visiting the Nick Craig Show or checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program this morning is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or if you have any legal questions, give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from them as we continue through the program here on this busy Tuesday morning. Tonight is the deadline. Iran has to make a deal with the United States of America, or President Donald Trump says that he is going to go forward with what he threatened to do over the weekend and backed up and relayed at a Monday press conference that took place in the White House press briefing room that lasted for a little over an hour and a half, included about 30 minutes of the president taking questions from the press, both friendly and non-friendly news outlets and organizations. I've got a bunch of clips from yesterday's events in the White House, at the White House, I should say, that we will get into as we roll through the program here on this Tuesday. And so the ball is totally in Iran's court. And I saw some concerning headlines earlier today that the Iranian regime is telling individuals to now lock hands with each other and go stand around power plants, of which the United States has threatened to bombard and obliterate if Iran is refusing to make a deal. No surprise, the United Nations, the useless entity that they are, is warning Trump against these strikes in Iran. The UN is useless. We know this. We are fully aware of the situation with them. They are the ones that should have been watching Iran and watching the nuclear deal that was signed under previous administrations, making sure that they were not spinning their centrifuges and enriching uranium. The UN, no surprise, was asleep at the wheel. All of Europe, no surprise, asleep at the wheel. The United States, under previous administrations, both the Obama and the Biden administration, no surprise, asleep at the wheel. And so we're at an inflection point with Iran. We're at an inflection point with the world's largest state sponsor of terror. There is no longer, at least from my vantage point, anything else to negotiate. Iran, according to President Donald Trump, and I think the vast majority of Americans agree with the president, we do not want Iran enriching uranium and building a nuclear warhead. I don't know that. I don't want that. I don't know why anybody would be advocating for that outside of Tehran and the Iranian regime itself. The UN, the EU, NATO, all of these other great organizations, do they want Iran to have a nuclear weapon? It's kind of, at this point, almost seems like that's the case, right? Because they're unwilling to do anything about it. And now we've got to listen to the UN chief warning President Donald Trump, hey, be careful, don't do anything, as the Secretary General Antonio Guterres of the United Nations warned the Trump administration that attacking civilian infrastructure in Iran is prohibited under international law, which we'll hear from the president. He was asked a similar question by the failing New York Times during his press conference yesterday. And so that's the status that has played out. None of these organizations are willing to stop Iran. None of these organizations are willing to call into check the nation's, or the world's, largest state sponsor of terror. So once again, it has to be the United States that does something. Now, we can argue and have a debate over whether this was the right way to do it. We can have legitimate conversation as to whether we should have gone about this the way that we did. All of that is fair discussion. All of that is fair conversation. But at the root of what we're talking about, it is, do you want the Iranian regime, do you want them to have the ability to build a nuclear ballistic missile? My answer is emphatically and very clearly no, I do not. They chant death to America. They want to see the fall of Western civilization. Their vast majority of what they support in their country is ideologically completely out of left field, not aligned at all with any sort of Western values, in some cases, a third world style society. I'm not interested in that in any way, shape, or form. And so the president has seemingly done the best that he could have done over the last 30 days, giving Iran opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to make a deal, to come to the table. They seem unwilling to do it, and now the president has got to prove whether he is bluffing or not. He claims that he is going to target Iranian infrastructure, Iranian electrical generation stations, Iranian physical infrastructure, bridges, roads, things of that nature. And we will see if the president follows through on that coming up later on this evening. We'll come back to that in just a little bit, but we'll start off in the beginning of the press conference that took place at the Oval Office yesterday, which started with information about the F-15E fighter jet that was shot down over the weekend, or late Friday, I should say, by Iran, and how that process played out. Here's President Donald Trump in the White House yesterday.
Late Thursday night, an American F-15 fighter jet went down deep inside enemy territory in Iran while participating in Operation Epic Fury, where we're doing unbelievably well, at a level that nobody's ever seen before. The entire country can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. Both members of the crew ejected from the aircraft and landed alive on Iranian soil. I immediately was asked to make a decision. I ordered the U.S. Armed Forces to do whatever was necessary to bring our brave warriors back home. A risky decision, because we could have ended up with 100 dead as opposed to 1 or 2. It's a hard decision to make. But in the United States military, we leave no American behind. We don't do it.
You know, this is a great point from the president, and it kind of goes into something I mentioned yesterday. There was a lot of chatter online, of course, from the usual suspects, deranged, out of control liberals who want to see the United States fail. They have so much hate and so much animosity for President Donald Trump and the Republicans. They posted pictures of the 2 planes that we left behind and blew up and said, is this really worth the price? Yes, of course it is. Some stupid plane or some stupid jet being left and blown to pieces by the United States is absolutely worth saving a U.S. service member. Absolutely worth saving a life. I guess I shouldn't be surprised by this, right? These are the same individuals that believe that, late-term abortion is totally normal and things of that nature. They don't care. They don't have any sort of respect for the sanctity of life. So I guess it shouldn't be a surprise that those on the political left now all of a sudden seem to care about U.S. military planes being left behind. Of course, the reason those planes were left behind was because of the fact that they had to rescue a service member who was by himself on his own for almost 48 hours. So to the president's point, we don't leave service members behind. We're not Europe. We're not all of these other failed countries throughout the world. We support our military and we back up our brave men and women of service.
Within hours, our armed forces deployed 21 military aircraft into hostile airspace, many flying at very low altitude, being shot by bullets. You bring rifles into play when you're going that low, but there are also certain advantages. And in broad daylight over Iran for 7 hours, at times facing very, very heavy enemy fire. We have a helicopter that's got a lot of bullets in it. It's amazing. We just realized how good those weapons are. Our machines are. Nobody has the equipment that we have, and nobody has the military that we have. Not even close. We're the most powerful military anywhere in the world by far. The flight crews and warfighters aboard those aircraft took extraordinary risks to rescue their fellow service members. This first wave of search and rescue forces successfully located the pilot of the F-15, and he was extracted from enemy territory by an HH-60 Jolly Green II helicopter. Fabulous machine as our warriors faced gunfire at very close range.
So that was the president laying out the situation that unfolded with the two different pilots that both ejected from that F-15E fighter jet that had to be rescued by U.S. forces. The first individual rescued relatively quickly in comparison than the other individual in which the United States was continuing their search for. The president then transitioned into talking about the operation to save the second service member who the hunt continued for over the weekend.
He was injured quite badly and stranded in an area teeming with terrorists from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps rough group, as well as besieged militia and local authorities. Many, on top of everything else, they told the communities actually within side of Iran, the people of Iran, they were given a tremendous incentive to find this pilot. Despite the peril, the officer followed his training and climbed into the treacherous mountain terrain and started climbing toward a higher altitude, something they were trained to do in order to evade capture. They want to always go as far away from the site of the shoot down. You want to go as far away because they all head right to that site. You want to be as far away as you can. And he was injured, and he was an amazing, amazing thing. He scaled cliff faces, bleeding rather profusely, treated his own wounds, and contacted American forces to transmit his location. They have a very sophisticated beeper-type apparatus that is on them at all times. And when they go out on these missions, they make sure they have lots of battery space and they're in good shape. And this one worked really well, amazingly, saved his life. We immediately mobilized a massive operation to retrieve him from the mountain holdout. And he kept going higher and higher. The mountain kept getting rougher and rougher and really very, very hard to find. The second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more. We were bringing them all over, and a lot of it was subterfuge. We wanted to have them think he was in a different location because they had a vast military force out there. Thousands of people were looking. So we wanted them to look in different areas, so we were scattered all over like we were right on top of them. We had 7 different locations where they thought, and they were very confused. They said, well, wait a minute, they've got groups here, they've got groups there. It's amazing.
So the president highlights there the operation that continued, and he followed up with that as well.
So in a breathtaking show of skill and precision, lethality and force, America's military descended on the area, the real area, engaged the enemy, rescued the stranded officer, destroyed all threats, and exited Iranian territory while taking no casualties of any kind. The heroic F-15 weapon system officer had evaded capture on the ground in Iran for almost 48 hours. That's a long time when you're in tough shape and when you're bleeding. It's a long time.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. You've got this guy who was behind enemy lines. I mean, I don't know that you could find yourself more behind enemy lines than a mountainous region of Iran for 48 hours, with the Iranians knowing that he had yet to be secured by the United States because somebody within the administration leaked to the press that we were still searching for one individual. That came up during the press conference. The president went pretty scorched earth on that, saying that somebody needs to go to prison over leaking that information and putting the life of a U.S. service member in grave jeopardy. Here was the president on that.
Back and not even much of a problem. But these 2 extraordinary rescues, because it was 2, and as you probably know, we didn't talk about the first one for an hour. And then somebody leaked something which will hopefully find that leaker. We're looking very hard to find that leaker. And talked about there's somebody missing. They basically said that we have one and there's somebody missing. Well, they didn't know there was somebody missing until this leaker gave the information. So whoever it was, we think we'll be able to find it out because we're going to go to the media company that released it, and we're going to say, national security, give it up or go to jail. And we know who, and you know who we're talking about, because some things you can't do. Because when they did that, all of a sudden, the entire country of Iran knew that there was a pilot that was somewhere on their land that was fighting for his life. And it also made it much more difficult for the pilots and for the people going in to search for him. All of a sudden, they know that there's somebody out there. They see all these planes coming in. It became a much more difficult operation because a leaker leaked that we have one, we've rescued one, but there's another one out there that we're trying to get. So actually, the country, Iran, put out a major notice, you all saw it, offering a very big award for anybody that captures the pilot. So in addition to a hostile, very talented, very good, very evil military, we had millions of people trying to get an award. So when you add that to it, but we have to find that leaker because that's a sick person. Probably didn't realize the extent of how bad it was. I can't imagine that the person did, but we're going to find out. It's national security, and the person that did the story will go to jail if he doesn't say, and that doesn't last long, and I think everybody would understand it. They put this mission at great risk. They put that man at great risk, and they put the hundreds of people that went in looking for him, because everyone now knows that we're going in.
You know, it's an interesting exchange there between the, or not really exchange, but an interesting commentary there from the president. And I obviously didn't realize that was the case beforehand. I don't really know that anybody did, that this leaker decided to provide this information to the press and kick off what can only be described as a race to rescue the remaining F-15E fighter pilot, because the media reports, and I believe it was CBS News that reported it first. It was either CBS or CNN. There's some disagreement as to who reported it first. They put that individual in grave danger for no reason, so that they could be the first to report that there was still a missing U.S. service member. Now, let's be clear about this. I don't know that, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some level of transparency or high level of transparency as it relates to our government. I absolutely believe that is the case. But when you are leaking classified ongoing military operations to the press and putting not only that service member in grave danger, the one who was still behind enemy lines, but the hundreds of others that were conducting the recovery and rescue mission, folks, that is a problem. The United States military needs to be able to conduct operations without all of the details immediately being released and leaked to the press. I mean, this is a very serious thing. If this individual had been captured by Iranian forces, you could very clearly and very easily point to U.S. media for the reason of that capture. You could point to the individual within the administration, who I hope the White House figures out who it was, for leaking this ongoing active recovery effort to essentially the Iranians. Once it hits the United States newswire, obviously the Iranians are taking a look at it, and that is why they put a $60,000 bounty, which in Iran is like 200 times the average median income, on his head. Right? That is a major, major problem. We'll hear more from President Donald Trump in this press conference that took place yesterday within the Oval Office. We'll hear from him about the importance of having a backup plan, which had to go into effect, plus a couple of questions from the press, including questions about international law. Are you ready you're going to be hurting the people of Iran? A lot of other interesting commentary coming up as President Trump remains the most transparent, the most accessible president in modern U.S. history, hosting about an hour-and-a-half long press conference within the White House yesterday. This is pretty standard for the president as it relates to talking to the press. We'll get into those additional clips and comments from the president coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington and remind you that if you have any legal challenges that you are dealing with, you need to make sure you call the law group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense. If so, the law group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. They're not some big national law firm. Melissa Gott and her team over at the law group, they live right here in southeastern North Carolina, right here in Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online lawgroupnc.com. It's the law group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the law group and their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. All right, quick break. On the other side, more from President Donald Trump and his White House press briefing yesterday. We'll get into those details as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Good Tuesday to you, and welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. A busy Tuesday here as the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, has set a deadline for this evening to make a deal with the Iranian regime. This was part of a larger press conference that he hosted at the Oval Office yesterday afternoon, highlighting the operation to rescue two U.S. military service members whose F-15E fighter jets were shot down by Iran over the weekend, or as we headed into the weekend. I think it was a late Thursday or early Friday Iranian time. That was a Friday here on the East Coast where that took place. The president was asked about having a backup plan as it related to these operations to secure those service members. And, well, it is great to have a backup plan. The president agreed with that.
As Commander-in-Chief, I never forget the extraordinary risk taken by the warriors that we send into battle and the genius. I mean, think of it, having a contingency of 3 planes waiting because we think the sand is so bad that we probably won't be able to take off. And the planes really got bogged. This was not much of a runway. This was a farm, not a runway. It's a farm, but it did the trick. But to have a contingency as opposed to having to wait 2 days, can you imagine, right in the middle? This was central. This was right, you would call it central casting if you were doing a movie for location. And probably the toughest area of Iran where we'd be sitting there. So these planes came in, those pilots came in so fast and so quick and got out of there. Everybody got aboard and just got 15-minute intervals. One load out, one load out. One load out. It happened, and we were watching, and we said, "That's amazing." It's in many ways, I was almost more impressed by the contingency that we had than the fact that if we would have had a runway or decent soil. But it was an amazing thing. But we thank God for every single one of them and the talent, the genius. It's not even talent; it's genius. It's the whole ball game. Every one of them.
And so the president's laying out there. I unfortunately don't have the time to bring you the entirety of the press event that took place at the Oval Office or within the White House press briefing room yesterday. But the president highlighted how they had an original plan of using these heavier planes to get individuals out of the area in which the rescue was conducted. But due to the fact that the landing strip, which he repeated multiple times throughout the event, was a farm, but just some random property in central Iran. The soil was very weak, and the planes were essentially getting stuck because they were too heavy. And how the backup plan of having these smaller planes be able to come in and pick up individuals as slower, as he noted, about a 15-minute interval, picking up individuals, landing, picking them up, and taking off. This was the operation. It's great when you have individuals within high levels of our government that understand that not everything is always going to go as planned and that you need to have a backup. You need to have a contingency. And in this case, the contingency, the backup plan, worked absolutely perfectly. And the only thing lost was 2 military planes that the United States went back and then it blew up so that the Iranians couldn't attempt to use. That's it. That's a strong leader. That's strong leadership. Those are smart decisions made by an administration that knows that when you're dealing with a conflict like this, not everything always goes as planned. Not everything goes perfectly. It's war, it's conflict. There's a lot of very dynamic, very unique factors. Love hearing that from the president. We also heard from the head of the CIA, heard from Pete Hegseth, General Raising Kane, as well as they provided some additional details and information, again, just constricted on how much I can truly bring you here on the program today. Then after those 3 individuals were done, the president came back to the podium and took questions from the press. He was first asked about protests that are continuing in Iran and what message he has for the protesters.
Well, they should do it, but again, the consequences are great. I mean, they were told if you protest, you will be shot immediately. You saw what happened to the young wrestler. He was a great champion, by the way. He was a great wrestler, one of the top in the world. And he and his 2 friends were hung. And all they did was say a little bit about liberty. They wanted liberty, and they were violently executed. But the number is up to probably 45,000 people were killed. So You know, when somebody stays in a house, when they know if they walk out of the house to protest, they'll be immediately shot and killed. And they issued that, that was publicly issued. It's not a secret.
And so it's a tough situation. Obviously this is multifaceted. The Iranian people, of course, have to want freedom, right? I mean, you can't force them to do so. You have to, you can lead a horse to water. You can't force it to drink. That's the old adage. And I'm nothing of what I'm saying is indicating that the Iranian people don't want freedom, but it's kind of they're obviously in between a rock and a hard place. They want the freedom. They hate the oppressive regime they live under. But at the same time, they are concerned that if they go out in the streets and protest, as the president noted, they risk being shot and killed by the Revolutionary Guard or local police force for protesting. And so it's a very tough situation for the individuals stateside in Iran who want this to be over with. They are very dissatisfied with the regime that has been controlling them. But of course, I don't know why any of them would want to be killed and why they'd want to risk their lives. There was also a question about the bombings and whether, you claim that the question was set up as, you claim that you want these protests to take place, yet you're dropping bombs on the area still. The president shut that question down pretty quickly.
You've said Iranians would be mad if you stopped these attacks, but why would they want you to blow up their infrastructure, to cut off their power? Wouldn't that be punishing Iranians for the actions of the regime?
They would be willing to, and it's suffering, they would be willing to suffer that in order to have freedom. The Iranians have, and we've had numerous intercepts. Please keep bombing. Bombs that are dropping near their homes. Please keep bombing. Do it. And these are people that are living where the bombs are exploding. And when we leave and we're not hitting those areas, they're saying, please come back, come back, come back. These are the people. I don't know what they do. All I can tell you is they want freedom. They have lived in a world that you know nothing about. It's a violent, horrible world where if you protest, you are shot.
And that's the fact. And it's no surprise that they want the United States to continue the operations again because they hate the oppressive regime. Probably my highlight from the press conference yesterday at the White House was when the president talked about those on the progressive left, those on the political left, who consistently talk about women's rights and LGBTQ rights and all these freedoms for all of these groups. The president has said something that I have been repeating for years about the inconsistency with these individuals.
And a lot of the news doesn't talk about that. They talk about, women's rights. You want to see women's rights? You're not going to see it there. It's amazing when I see some of the stupid people like, AOC plus 3, all that group. They talk about, freedom for Iran. They don't tell you the real facts. Women, men, gays. How about gays for Iran? They kill the gays. They throw them off buildings. So I wonder what's going on. I can only say this. They want us to keep bombing, even if it jeopardized, because their life is in much greater danger. They want freedom for Iran, but it's very hard for them to protest. I actually tell them, I said, don't go out. I fully understand.
Just think about the miserable situation that you're in where your government is so oppressive, the regime, and as the president notes, and of course those in the media, those in the political left can't wrap their head around this. You want to talk about humane treatment of individuals. You want to talk about freedom and rights. You can't go anywhere worse than a country like Iran, where women are treated as second-class citizens. Whereas the president notes, if you are gay in Iran, you are risking being thrown off a building, executed in public, stoned to death. All the very inclusive things that we get with the free Palestine folks, the gays for Iran, LGBTQ for Iran, and all of these protests that take place in the United States with a bunch of moronic idiot liberals that don't have even the most basic understanding of what truly goes on in a country like Iran. And it is a miserable position to be in where you would rather have bombs falling near your property than live under such an oppressive regime. But that is literally what is happening on the ground right now in Iran. They would rather risk being bombed by the United States than live under the Ayatollah and the incredibly oppressive Iranian regime. Let that sink in for a second. I don't care how bad you think you've got it. That is an absolutely miserable position to be in. But that's real. That is actually what is happening right now. Over 40,000 protesters killed just this year. The number's probably way higher, but according to U.S. intel, 40,000 protesters within Iran murdered by the regime. Not for breaking any serious law, not for stealing, not for being violent, but for going out on the streets and protesting and wanting some level of freedom. A miserable situation for the Iranian people. But that's, again, what is really going on the ground. Continuing with some of the question and answer session from yesterday's White House press briefing that was not headlined by Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, but started off by President Donald Trump. We heard from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. We heard from Ratcliffe with the CIA. We also heard from General Raisin Kane as well, as they laid out the operation that took place to rescue 2 U.S. service members that were shot down. Their F-15E fighter jet shot down by Iranian forces late last week. The recovery mission, the brave and incredibly heroic operation that took place 48 hours behind enemy lines for one of the pilots, scaled somewhere near the ballpark of 7,000 feet up a mountaintop, kind of secluding himself in a crevice of that mountain, using some sort of a beacon radio system to identify to United States forces where he was. At the same time, you had U.S. media leaking that the operation was still ongoing, causing the Iranian government, or the Iranian regime, I should say, to put out a notice to the IRGC and other individuals. Find this guy's head, we'll give you $60,000, which is an incredible amount of money because Iran's economy is a disaster and their people live in abject poverty. So all of that being laid out at the White House press briefing yesterday. The president was asked an interesting question by a reporter from Fox News about, was there a point with this second recovery operation for the second U.S. service member, was there a period of time where you thought, okay, the juice is not worth the squeeze here? Obviously, you already heard from the president, we don't leave any forces behind, and I agree emphatically with that statement. But was there a point where you thought, we're putting too many other service members at risk to save this one individual? And was asked, did you ever think about aborting this second recovery mission? Very interesting information here from the president.
Was there a point that that you were thinking there's too much on the line, and somebody was saying maybe we abort this now and wait? I mean, given the resource, like the general said, it seemed like there was so much on the line here. You must have been thinking, well, this could have completely changed.
So the first one, which was in many ways as dangerous as the second, I guess it gets, because we're flying over daylight. You know, we're the best at the world at night. We have goggles that nobody, we have goggles, I've tried them, they're unbelievable. I see better with the goggles at night than I see without them during daylight. I mean, daylight today, we have a beautiful day. You see just as well with goggles. In many ways, it's enhanced. So we have the best in the world. So it's much safer for us to do it at night, whereas other people, no other country has that capability. They don't have that particular piece of equipment like we do. But when I was told, flying and in daylight, I think we flew 7 hours over Iran, and that's a long time, over unbelievably hostile territory where they have nothing but weapons. We took out their anti-aircraft, which is great. We took out their radar, which is great. We took out a lot, but they still have, you know, what hit this one was a handheld shoulder missile, heat-seeking missile. So it's not like, you know, they're totally whatever. And they had probably a little luck, because you got to get lucky. But they shot it, and it got sucked in right by the engine. But these guys were out of there. They were great. Their timing was great. But no, I was told that this is a very dangerous mission. I understand. They didn't say it's a foolish mission. They said, you know, we're going to be sacrificing hundreds of people do this. This is, I mean, you have tankers that are flying over this area so that the flight was so long they had to refuel. It's a very dangerous mission. I just felt it was worth it. If you would have told me that we would have been successful, gotten both, and nobody was even essentially injured, I would have said that would be impossible. Yeah, Bruce.
Yeah, this goes back to the longer running conversation about the difference between strong leadership and weak leadership. You saw that weak leadership on display under the Biden administration. The inability or the unwillingness to make a decision on things, the inability to seemingly do anything about anything that was going on. Compare and contrast that to this administration, where the president admits, yeah, this was a risky recovery mission. This was very risky because of the leaks that took place within the administration. The White House claims and the military officials claim they had to essentially stage fake rescue missions throughout Iran to keep forces scattered throughout the country so that it seemed like there was 7 or 8 different recovery missions going on so that they would not all triangulate onto where all of the U.S. operations were taking place. Hundreds of U.S. service members put in harm's way. And the president says, yeah, it was risky, but I thought and I felt that it was worth doing. He, in fact, did. He was, of course, the commander-in-chief, the one with the final sign-off. And in this case, it could not have worked out any better for the United States. Bringing home those 2 U.S. service members outside of the one service member who was behind enemy lines with some pretty serious injuries. No other injuries, nobody else shot down, nobody else killed or severely injured. An absolutely incredible military operation. The New York Times was at the White House press briefing on Monday, no surprise there, and decided to lecture the President of the United States about international law. Take a listen to this exchange.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the question. Deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure violate the Geneva Conventions and international law.
Who are you with?
I'm with the New York Times. Zolan from the New York Times. Are you
The failing.
Are you concerned?
Circulation way down at the New York Times.
Are
What's
you
going on
concerned
with
that your threat to bomb power plants and bridges amount to
No,
war
not at
crimes?
all. No, I'm not. I hope I don't have to do it. But again, I just said 47 years they've been negotiating with these people. They're great negotiators, and because they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And if somebody that takes my place someday is weak and ineffective, which possibly that will happen because we had numerous presidents that were weak, ineffective, and afraid of Iran, we're never going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And if you think it's okay for people that are sick of mind, that are tough, smart, and sick, really sick, from a policy standpoint, from a standpoint, any which way you want to say, mentally, these are disturbed people. If you think I'm going to allow them, and powerful and rich, to have a nuclear weapon, you can tell your friends at the New York Times, not going to happen.
International law. Oh, Mr. President, what you're threatening to do is going to break international law. Let me be perfectly clear with my thoughts on international law. They only work when everybody is willing to play by the rules and respect it. But that's not what happens. So I'm really not interested in being lectured by some bozo from the New York Times about international law. Oh my God, you're going after power plants. You're going after infrastructure. That is in severe opposition of international law. How about killing 40,000+ protesters? Is that in violation of international law? Again, this stuff only works if everybody's willing to play by the same rules. And it could be a useful framework. It could make sense if all parties were willing to respect it, but they don't. Right? The Iran nuclear deal. Unwilling to respect it and deal with the situation that was laid out in front of them. This is an Iranian regime that has been using cluster bombs and other sorts of munitions against its civilians for decades. So I don't want to hear some stupid lecture about international law. Give me a break. Today is Power Plant and Bridge Day, and it is going to be fascinating to see what comes of these continued negotiations between the Iranian regime and the United States of America. It's going to be absolutely fascinating. There are some things kind of breaking right now, some various things coming in. The United States apparently has hit some let's see, just reading this, U.S. strikes carried out on dozens of strikes against military targets Monday night into early Tuesday morning near the Strait of Hormuz to potentially get some of that kicked off and reopening. Other reports coming in right now as well, calling and claiming that some of the oil infrastructure within Iran is also being targeted, which would, by the way, completely neuter their ability to do anything moving forward. I mean, the only thing that Iran has got right now is oil and the ability to extract and refine and sell oil. With that evaporated, with that going away, there's really nowhere else that you can possibly go with their government. I mean, there's nothing else that they can possibly stand for. And so it is going to be absolutely fascinating to see what goes on today in Iran. Apparently, the United States military has just struck a Karag Island where Iran handles its oil. Some videos coming in showing heavy plumes of smoke already taking place there. I'm going to be as blunt and honest with you as I possibly can be. The president isn't effing around anymore. I mean, he's not. He is a master negotiator. He is a master deal maker. He has given Iran every opportunity possible to come to the table, to suspend and begin the process of dismantling their nuclear program for military. If they want to have a civilian nuclear program for energy, the United States has already said, absolutely, no problem there. We'll help you with a civilian nuclear program so that you can produce cheap, clean electricity for your population. No issue there at all. The problem is their military nuclear program. They're unwilling to give it up, which should be no surprise because it's really one of the only things that they've got. As long as they are refining uranium, they can make the argument and make the claim that they are that they're a world power and they can threaten other nations, so on and so forth. Once they lose that bargaining chip, they're nothing more than an oil producing country, which is where I would argue they need to be because their leadership cannot be trusted. Their ideology is completely backwards compared to the vast majority of the Western world. They want to see death and destruction to prosperous nations like the United States, like most of Europe. Of course, Europe doesn't give a shit because they're useless, weak, and inefficient at everything that they do. And so the president has laid out the red freaking carpet for Iran. And I'm not interested in any more extensions. I don't want to hear that, we're working towards a deal. If a deal is not on the president's desk by 8 o'clock tonight, I'm going to now quote the president of the United States, we should bomb the shit out of Iran. I don't care. I'm over this situation. I'm over it. We've given them the opportunity. We've been good faith negotiators, good faith actors. If they're not willing to play by the rules, if they're not willing to come to the conversation, if they're not willing to talk about this stuff, then to hell with them. Blow up all their infrastructure and let them figure out how to recover. That's where I'm at with it. The president laid out very clearly, we have been placating this regime for freaking decades. Obama flew over billions of dollars, pallets worth of cash for them to stop their nuclear program. It didn't work. They're still refining uranium, at least up until last summer when the United States used those bunker buster bombs to destroy part of their nuclear program. They're bad faith actors. The time of placation, the time of trying to have these negotiations and say, we believe you this time. When you say that ship has sailed, ladies and gentlemen, these are untrustworthy individuals. It is an untrustworthy regime. They cannot be trusted. And so the United States, because Europe is so freaking useless, has been left with one situation moving forward. They either come to an agreement with the United States by 8 o'clock tonight, or we essentially send them back to the Stone Age. If I were a gambling man, I would bet that we were likely to send them back to the Stone Ages because I think they're too stupid, they're too incompetent to believe that the United States is actually willing to do this. And that's key. They think that the United States and President Donald Trump is bluffing, that he's not willing to do it. I can promise you, I think that is a very, very stupid decision. The president has made it abundantly clear, open the Strait of Hormuz, hand over your nuclear program for military, and we can find a way to get along. Iran is not willing to do either of those things, and so the president is going to unleash, it's seemingly happening right now as we're live here on the air, just about 9 minutes in front of 8 o'clock here on this Tuesday morning. Multiple reports now coming in that the United States has severely attacked portions of Karag Island. Just reading this. Electrical supply disrupted in portions of Iran's Karag Island following projectiles from hitting transmission lines. So we are already conducting these operations right now. Let's see if Iran still thinks that the United States is bluffing. It is likely to be a busy news day. Hopefully you'll follow me over on social media. You can follow me over on X at Nicholas M. Craig, like The Nick Craig Show over on Facebook. As I see news flow in throughout the day today, I'll throw it up there on social media. And of course, we'll have the latest coming up for you tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show. I want to thank the Law Group for their continued support. Melissa Gott and her amazing team. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. A busy news day. We'll have everything and all the latest coming up for you tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.